Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the rundown. So we have some updates on the information we've given so far. We have some new information and blanket denial by the DOJ. Let's start with the DOJ. Well, okay, let's start with what is Set 8, because Set 8 is interesting. According to Politico, Set 8 was initially at least tens of thousands, we believe now 11,000 files that were accessible for a period prior to release. The DOJ discovered that, removed them, and has since released them. They were released in their entirety. Actually, I think so. We've been playing catch up. I think they were released earlier today. I'm not entirely sure when. How much more redaction has gone into them during that period of time, we don't know. How the original Dataset 8 compares to the current Dataset 8, we also do not know. However, with the official release of Dataset 8 was this message by the U.S. Department of Justice. The Department of Justice has released nearly 30,000 more pages of documents related to Jeffrey Epstein. Some of these documents contain untrue and sensationalist claims made against President Trump that were submitted to the FBI right before the 2020 election. To be clear, the claims are unfounded and false, and if they have had a shred of credibility, they certainly would have been weaponized against President Trump already. Nevertheless, out of our commitment to the law and transparency, the DOJ is releasing these files or these documents with the legally required protections for Epstein's victims. Now, we've already reported on a number of these files, and we're going to talk about those in a minute. I would like to point out a couple of things about this that are profoundly disturbing. First of all, these files contain claims about loads of people, and when it's Bill Clinton, the deputy directors of the FBI and or various other cabinet members have no problem putting up and saying, oh, there's a picture of the president, and oops, wrong president, and making all sorts of innuendo. And so if there's any false allegations against Trump, which I'm sure there are, there's false allegations against everybody. Trump had no small hand in saying Obama was from Kenya. This is not to say that it's okay. False allegations need to get cleared up. But this is saying that the Office of the Department of Justice isn't necessarily the venue to do that. And if they want to clear people's names, then start clearing everybody and start protecting the victims, because we've got confirmation now of several victims that have been completely doxxed, including their current phone numbers. This Department of Justice seems to only care about vindicating Trump. And let's for 1 second say that Trump is completely innocent of absolutely any wrongdoing. Vindicating him is a good idea, but it's not the job of the Department of Justice. The job of the Department of Justice is to prosecute the guilty and vindicate anybody who's been wrongfully charged or convicted. Anybody, Trump included. But this is that the Department of Justice has become a mouthpiece for the political concerns of Donald J. Trump is I'm just going to say disgusting. It's the only word I can come up with. So I'm going to say Pam Bondi. She probably wasn't. She may or may not have been the one who wrote this. This came from the Twitter feed of the Department of Justice. She also says, to be clear, these claims are unfounded. With some of these claims, she is correct. We will get into that. And false. Saying that they're false is a positive assertion, and in order to do that, she needs to have some evidence, and we will get into that as well. Some may well be false, but we don't know, and we don't know in part because there's been as little transparency as possible, and what we're starting to see now is the first genuine transparency, and it's raising a hell of a lot of questions. But to say the positive claims that they're false, if she can demonstrate that, again, we'll get into it. So, all right, having said all that now, we've seen a number of documents. I'd like to talk about each of the four that we initially covered. So her claim is that those documents were, hold on a second, unfounded and false, and that they were fake claims that had been made explicitly to damage the president in an election, or damage then candidate Trump in an election year. And that's why, and that the association with Epstein was the easiest way to do that. I have no doubt in my mind that that happens. I have no doubt in my mind that that happens to all candidates who are running for president. So the question is not did it happen here, but how much of what we're looking at is that. I would like to start with the the chauffeur who in 2000 claimed to have chauffeured a girl who claimed to have been raped, and that he heard Trump talking to Epstein in his limousine in 97 or 98, somewhere around that. We do not know what follow-up was taken on that information. We have the initial report. That's what we've got. It's in the Epstein files. According to Pam Bondi, none of that actually happened. That was a false report being made to damage the president. My question is, was there a follow-up? Did they check and see if this man was A, who he said he was, B, was a chauffeur, had been a chauffeur at that time, had been Donald Trump's chauffeur at that time, and would have been in a position to know at that time? If they didn't follow up, there should at least be a document saying, we don't believe this is credible and worth the time of the FBI, so that we can know they didn't follow up, and then we can decide whether or not we believe that that's reasonable. If they did follow up, we need to see what they learned, including but not limited to, yes, this man is credible for X, Y, and Z reasons, or no, he's not. All we have is this report. It may be that in future iterations of data release we'll get more, but you'd think the follow-up would be tied to the report. Now, I will confess, it does seem convenient for somebody to call and say, oh, yes, I was their chauffeur and I'm remembering this conversation, especially if there's no previous reporting of this. I think that's the one where he refers to a girl who did, in fact, die of suicide and is tied to the Epstein circumstance. Having said that, someone could just sit there and say, well, I don't like this guy and I'm going to make something up to try to damage his reputation. That's about the dumbest thing you could do because the FBI is going to catch you. But, okay. The reality is we don't know. We know that this allegation was made, and she says it is not credible. I can see why. I mean, yeah, it's a number of years after the fact. And we checked the dates, and sure enough, this complaint was made during an election, about 2 months before the election. So her complaint that it's not credible, I think, has merit. Her position that it's unfounded, we don't know, because we don't know what follow-up was done. And her claim that it's false is so far patently absurd because she's offered no evidence to say that it's false. It may not be founded. There are plenty of things that are true that aren't founded. And then again, there are a lot of things that are unfounded that the reason they're unfounded is because they're false. We just don't know. But that is their defense to that and a couple of other documents. And it strikes me as, in that case, reasonably credible. As to the woman who claimed to have been at a party and been pregnant at the age of 13, she's from New Mexico. Mildly suspicious because this is the first I've heard of New Mexico being involved. Having said that, she used her real name and address, and she contacted from a computer that was registered to her internet address at her home to make contact with the FBI to discuss this. She claims in that report to have discussed it several times and to have reported it several times. There is no follow-up, so we don't know if the FBI checked to see if she's ever contacted before. We don't know if the FBI checked and found out if she had or had not met Epstein. Apparently, all of this had actually happened on yachts and boats and stuff like that, not while she was in New Mexico. So, and she describes that to some degree. Again, no follow-up. So if Pam Bondi wants to, if she says they're unfounded right now, other than being a FBI complaint, there's no foundation that they've provided, but that's why they're supposed to do follow-up work. So this woman, I don't know if she's credible or not. I don't know. The date, once again, was several months before the election, so it is a credible claim to say maybe she was calling just to what she may also be a victim. How many victims have been dismissed? This is why you say, believe the women. You start out believing the claim. The FBI has limited resources. Did they follow up on this? We don't know. And if I trusted a word that came out of this is why you need to be as honest as possible, as often as possible, because if I believed a word that Pam Bondi ever said, I'd believe her if she said, well, look, this is why we didn't find it credible, and no, we didn't follow up. You'd hope that follow up. Back then, the FBI was actually funded and had experienced officers who could have followed up on this. What did they find? We don't know. So that is the status of those two, and that's probably why no other mainstream news organization is going with it. It's still all over social media. I've found instances of it on Instagram, TikTok, all this other stuff talking about it. The reports exist exactly as we showed them to you. The complaints exist exactly as we showed them. Bondi is correct. Those complaints were filed just before the election, and I'm not a detective. I don't know how to tell whether or not they're credible. I did find one thing, and I mentioned this myself slightly, when Epstein in the suicide letter mentions Trump, it's almost dialogue as exposition. Oh, by the way, did you know that Trump is guilty? But that letter, we know for a fact, wasn't going to anybody that Epstein would have thought would have sent it to the FBI. So it's luck that the FBI has it. But the only evidence of that has been redacted. We have the unredacted version that shows the postmark, shows exactly where it was sent and how, and that it was returned because the sender was no longer available. That's how the FBI got a hold of it. So that seems unlikely to have been faked. Nonetheless, that letter also notwithstanding, not a lot of people are making much about that letter. My suspicion is because the letter's author was Jeffrey Epstein. There was one other thing we discussed, and I'm going to bring that up, and we'll talk about that, which is the 10 co-conspirators, which is the first anybody's heard of this. This is making the rounds on ABC, NBC, and a few other stations. My guess is as they try to sort out what it means, because we had the same problem. 10 co-conspirators, what does that mean? It seems obvious at first, but they had this problem when Epstein was indicted in 2007 and through the 2008 trial. How do you define co-conspirator? In general, in most cases, it's somebody who worked with them to help, do whatever illegal actions they were doing. The problem is the lines between co-conspirator and victim are blurred in situations like this, and they are blurred badly. One of his first victims procured more than 50 girls for him. Why the hell would she do that? Well, because she was 16, she didn't know what was going on, she was terrified. He said, if you tell anyone, I will burn your house down, quote, forever, whatever that means. And he also suggested that she could win favor with him and maybe less abuse if she got other girls to come in. And she testified to telling her friends, and we've got the heart-wrenching one of a woman who got her own sister into this and said, we can make some easy money. Okay, by the definition of co-conspirator, they're a co-conspirator. One of them brought 50 girls to him. But the prefrontal lobes aren't yet developed. There's a reason they're called underage. She can't make decisions enough to be considered guilty. There's no way. But who gets to make these decisions? Usually a prosecutor. That's why in the 2007 case, what they did was they gave blanket immunity to, quote, any co-conspirators. The word any was a bad choice of language. And the reason was, at the time, it's hard to, maybe it was deliberate by Epstein's, a smart move by Epstein's client to try to protect Maxwell. But one of Maxwell's defense was, hey, I was a co-conspirator at the time, and this gave blanket immunity to any co-conspirator. Well, that's because nobody knew at the time how many children were co-conspiring in the sense that I just described. And it is patently obvious that they should be completely immune from anything that they've done. So they received blanket immunity. But it was intended for underage co-conspirators, not adults. It has been used to try to protect adults. So now you've got 10, quote, co-conspirators in this indictment that's the first that we've seen that came out in Dataset 8. What do they mean when they say co-conspirators? And I pointed out in earlier today's show, one was a businessman from Ohio. We believe, and ABC has come out and said that they believe that this is Wexler. Wexler is in Ohio. Wexler was Jeffrey Epstein's biggest financer. Originally, if you see our show on sort of how Epstein got to where he is, it appears as if he and Wexler, we don't know for certain, but it appears as if he and Wexler had a falling out. And if Wexler tried to get away from Epstein, but was essentially blackmailed into continuing to give Epstein money. So we don't know either what he knew or to what extent he was a co-conspirator, but the document does list 10 co-conspirators, and what we have is somebody from the FBI's New York office, and this is the problem too, which is it's an FBI agent, and the agent's name has been redacted. The agent is not a victim. Unless the agent was undercover, why is the agent's name redacted? But an agent from the New York office wrote an email to the DOJ and was concerned because upon the death of Epstein, the idea was, based on the indicting documents, that all Epstein and his co-conspirators would be tried together, essentially in a RICO case. So all of the co-conspirators would be tried in the Epstein case. With no Epstein, what happens to the co-conspirators? And this was the question that the FBI agent asked in an email, let's see, from New York's office, 12:24 p.m., July 7th, 2019. I do believe we have that one. We haven't aired that one. We've got it. It's if I can get it, I'll try to air it before I go. I just don't want to keep everybody waiting around while I go look for it. anyways, the reply is attempts were made to, and then a redacted person and Brunel. Okay, who's this redacted person? If it's a victim, then I see them being redacted. This gets back into, this is a god-awful mess. Why is the name redacted? I believe the name is redacted because it's someone we know. We know Wexler was redacted. It gave enough information that we could figure out who it was, but he shouldn't have been redacted. He was an adult. He was not a victim. Attempts were made to redacted and Brunel. Brunel we've talked about. Jean-Luc Brunel was the modeling scout who delivered dozens, at least, of young girls below the age of 18 to Epstein. So this was one of Epstein's major sources for girls. We've got where he called and said basically he's got a shipment of girls coming in. I mean, it's breathtaking. It's like chattel. It's not something I'm going to dwell on. At any rate, but the interesting thing about Brunel is he's dead. Now, Brunel was charged with rape. At the time when he was charged, people were just beginning to learn for a second or third time about the sex trafficking of Epstein. But Brunel was found dead in his prison cell in February of 2022. He had apparently committed suicide. So the investigation seems to have stopped on the Paris side at Brunel, and that's profoundly unfortunate, because if it was just him committing rape, that's one thing. If it's him part of a sex trafficking ring, there's a reason RICO statutes exist. But he is the only one who is not redacted. Wexler is still alive and cannot be redacted by the, unless he's a victim, unless they choose to claim that. But you cannot redact someone for political expediency, what it might do to their image or anything else. And that was made crystal clear and has been repeated. I think today they went on Face the Nation and said, look, these are the conditions for redaction, and they are not being met. Maxwell's name is also listed as one of the 10 co-conspirators. So it's Maxwell, Brunel, somebody redacted, a man from Ohio who is a businessman. We believe that's Wexler. And that leaves 6 more that we don't know who they are. 6 co-conspirators that were supposed to be indicted with Epstein, but because he's dead, and the FBI has not told us who they are. What the FBI has said was that there was nobody else involved, that there was nobody else worth indicting, and that it was just Epstein and Maxwell, which is odd because Patel testified to that after we already knew about Brunel and about Prince Andrew. So it's like we already know it's not just those two. Now, Prince Andrew was a client. Brunel was a co-conspirator. So there's at least 2 other people. By the way, we could indict Andrew today if we wanted to. He may be one of those 10. I don't know. But he's been destroyed in England. And the question is, why do we think there's not enough evidence to indict him? According to Pam Bondi, there's nobody. All right. Sorry, I'm just repeating myself at this point. So the question that I think most people are focusing on right now is, who are the 10 co-conspirators? It's crystal clear that the New York office was very concerned that they were not going to get charged. The DOJ made it clear that they would, in fact, follow up. In fact, if I can find that email. No, I probably... is this it? I'm going to check here. No. So, and I will try one more. No, I don't seem to have it handy, and I'm not going to make you guys wait while I look for it. But the email, the DOJ makes it crystal clear that they will follow up on the co-conspirators, and we've never heard about anything from any of those co-conspirators ever again. In fact, we've had the testimony of Pam Bondi and Kash Patel before Congress that there were no co-conspirators and there's nobody else to indict. That, despite the fact that we know Prince Andrew can be indicted. The next, there was a question earlier I wanted to answer it. Have I redacted any of the files? There's word going around that there's a way to self-redact the files using a copy and paste technique. Those kinds of things have existed, and I've seen them, and they've worked. If they work on any of the files here, it would probably be hit or miss. And the reason is they have so many agents involved. Different agents are using different techniques for redacting these things. And anything that's a screenshot of something is impossible to redact if it was redacted before they took the screenshot or took the picture of the image. You cannot unredact that. So I don't know if those techniques are valid. As of yet, we have not had something that was so urgent to unredact that we've attempted to do that. My guess is, half of and this was Maudy's point earlier, which is, the entire geek world is on this right now. And that's how they found the unindexed versions of the eighth data set before it was supposed to be released. So there are people who have more, and I know some of these techniques. I know exactly what they did to find that. That's not a rare technique. It's probably, in terms of navigating the web, one of the first things you learn is that there's an index page to every single folder. But if that index page is either blank or not there, you can still access the files as long as you know the name. So we'll see. I don't know. That's what I've heard. You copy it into a document, the redactions don't go with it. If you redact using Adobe, it may be that Adobe just leaves the redaction over it, and when you hit cut and paste, you're copying the text. Like I said, I would be a little surprised if that's with every single document. Would have discovered that by now, and my suspicion is it's only with Dataset 8. I've copied and pasted some of it. I may look into it right now since we haven't. It's been a busy day. That's where we stand. Right now, it looks like people are most focused on the co-conspirators, which I think is probably a good idea. The claims that... Okay, thank you, Titan. The extraordinarily serious claims that were made to the FBI. We don't know anything about those claims because if they were followed up on, nobody has told us. We don't know who made them. They appear to have been made, here's the other thing, they appear to have been made on the tip line. So this was not the FBI going out on their own initiative and doing these interviews. This appears to be someone contacting the FBI. Now, a number of these victims have contacted the FBI, and they've had to do that, and they've had to contact the FBI repeatedly, just like the woman who said when she was 13 she had been dragged into this. So I don't know. There's no way to know. They haven't given us sufficient information. Pam Bondi has given a plausible explanation on those items only that, hey, this was right before the election. It's just someone trying to smear Trump. Fine. Okay. How about you do your job and get the people who are trying to smear the victims and say that they're lying? Because I will tell you this. I've heard enough and seen enough, especially of the Oversight Committee, to be about as sure as I can be that they're telling the truth and that other very powerful people were involved. I really hate to quote George W. Bush, but you're either for us or you're against us. There's no middle ground on this one. You're either for getting to the truth, and I said this earlier, I don't care really what the truth is. I don't care if the truth is that it's my favorite presidents and my boyhood heroes all involved in this. I don't care. As long as it's the truth, as long as every precaution is taken to protect the victims and to protect innocent people from being falsely accused, we get the truth. And I don't see anybody really interested in that on the Department of Justice side, except pointing out that, well, there's a smear campaign against Donald Trump. Yeah, there's a smear campaign against every public official. There's a smear all of us have been the part of a smear campaign in high school, junior high. We're aware. So, anyways, that's it. That's where we stand. That's the DOJ's response to ostensibly the files that we showed earlier today. We still have those files. Those files are in the Discord, but I would warn you of the caveat that she's not wrong in as much as until we have the follow-up, we don't know what they mean. The part that she kind of ignores, I'm going to put this up one more time because maybe some of you just joined us, and this is just remarkable. Contain untrue and sensationalist claims made against President Trump that were submitted to the FBI right before the 2020 election. That would include the two of the claims that we showed earlier. That does not include the suicide letter, and the third was this. No, okay. And that would not include the email from the FBI field office and a bunch of other stuff. But she's clearly trying to tamp down on the documents that we showed earlier today. She's got a point. I was about to say, unfortunately, she's got a point. No, I don't care if she's telling the truth. Listen, I could hate her from here till kingdom come. As long as she's telling the truth, I am on her side. Right now, she hasn't done a lot to inspire confidence. That's why Marjorie Taylor Greene, when Marjorie Taylor Greene is doing the right thing, I applaud her. It's Marjorie Taylor Greene. Believe me, it's like I feel like I'm a cat being rubbed the wrong way. But if she's doing the right thing, it's like, yay, you got my support. Hate to say it, we're behind you. So, that were submitted to the FBI right before the 2020 elections. That doesn't make them false, but she's got a point. To be clear, the claims are unfounded and false. They may be unfounded, we don't know, because we don't know what follow-up was made, and if they're false, that's great. What that means is they did the follow-up. So the second she says they're false, perfect. Show us how you know that. She knows that. She just said that. Okay, great. What was the follow-up? What did the agents do to verify that these were just people making false claims? I have a feeling there isn't going to be an answer to that question. So a healthy dose of skepticism, probably on at least those first two, is worth holding on to. I'm less skeptical of one and more skeptical of another. It doesn't matter at this point. We've got lots to work with and work on right now, the 10 co-conspirators. To the best of my ability to understand, because they were being indicted in federal court, if it said co-conspirator, they were probably adults, and the question of them being a victim had already been answered by the prosecutor in their own mind, and they would not have put them on as a co-conspirator if they were of the kind that we were talking about in 2007. Well, gee, why didn't they do that in 2007? They did. No co-conspirators who were children ended up getting charged. That was part of the negotiation of the deal that they were working on with Epstein, was to make sure that those kinds of co-conspirators were protected. They would not, in my view, again, not being a lawyer, I have a hard time believing that any of those 10 co-conspirators are of the kind that we are talking about. that we were talking about then. I suspect they are all genuine, full adult co-conspirators with mens rea who knew what they were doing and knew it was illegal and did it anyway. Certainly, the names that we know about, Maxwell and Brunel, were that way. Both. Brunel, absolutely. Look, when you have a phone call and the secretary leaves, yes, Mr. Brunel called a shipment of young girls coming in today. He thinks you'll like them. That's pretty much verbatim. That's what it said. That's what the secretary left for Jeffrey Epstein. Oh, that's hard to defend. So you can see why he was on the co-conspirator list. So the question is, who's the other six? I think that's what everybody's looking at right now. We have a long list of things that we're looking at right now and still going through. Our team has been doing a spectacular job. We're all exhausted. I'm exhausted. We have a downtime coming up, 9 p.m. Eastern, with a Xandering. Apparently, there is a Venezuelan... to the best of my knowledge, they haven't caught it, but I've been wrapped up on the Epstein stuff. To the best of my knowledge, we're still chasing now for the third day a Venezuelan oil tanker, which seems to be able to evade the U.S. Marines, Navy, and all that other stuff. I'm aware there are some complications, but nonetheless, there's something about that I find kind of hilarious. It's like Trump's taken over, and it's like, sir, we can't catch the oil tanker. Well, how fast is it going? I've seen the helicopters there ready to land. I think one possible concern, just FYI, and this is just, we heard a report, and we discussed this a short while ago. The report is credible in as much as it's a genuine report that came out of an office that had been paying attention to the Kremlin and said that Putin was going to be putting armed soldiers on the his shadow fleet, so that basically for the same reason we were thinking of putting soldiers into Ukraine. If we put soldiers in Ukraine who do not fire, who don't engage, they just stand there, and Putin hits one of them by accident, that could trigger Article 5. So, on the same way of thinking, there was a report that said Putin is going to be putting on some ships Russian soldiers so that if anybody tries to invade the ship, the soldiers won't be told to defend it, but they will be told to cause trouble, and if any of them get shot, it's an act of war. It may be they're concerned that there's something like that with this ship. It may be they can't shoot out the rudder on a oil tanker. I have no idea. We do have a commander who might be able to explain. I would think, too, you could have commandos rappelling from a helicopter. I don't know. I just know that we've been chasing an oil tanker for 3 days and for some reason can't seem to catch it. And Xandering will probably have the answer to that too. So that'll be downtime tonight, in time tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern. Thank you all very much for joining us. Let me quickly check the live chat. And like I said, I wanted to get this update out, especially given how, we wanted to make sure everything was up to date and you guys had everything you needed. So that's where we stand. We still have... all that's still on the Discord, so go check that out if you want, and we will see you tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern for In Time. Have a good night, all.